Welcome back to another episode of Dear Single Mama Podcast. I am your host and founder, Clarion Brown, and I'm so excited for you to be joining me today. I have a special guest in awareness of Mental Health Awareness Month for the month of May. So if you're listening to this in June, we just still carried it over, and so you still it's still a very prominent time to listen to it, and you were led to listen to this episode for a reason. So I'm excited on tonight. If you are listening from Spotify, please hit follow, leave a 5-star review. Apple Podcast, same thing. Follow the show and also leave us a 5-star review. All right, so my guest tonight, her name is Chanel Stevens. She is a mother of 3 adult children and a grandmother of 2. And in honor of mental health awareness, she's going to be sharing her journey through the challenges of growing up with a parent who had mental health issues and experiences her own struggles with anxiety and depression. All right. Everybody, help me give a virtual welcome to Chanel. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining, and thank you for willing to share your story with us. I got to speak with you before we did the episode, and just to hear your story and even just to hear the strength behind your voice, it was a lot. So, can you just kind of walk us through, because this one's going to be really good because we get to hear it from a different perspective of someone who has dealt with that as close to home as far as a parent, and then your own personal struggle. So kind of just give us like a little background of that when it pertains to your mother, whatever you're willing to share.
Absolutely, my pleasure. So, my mother struggled with mental health issues from the time I was a little girl. I actually ended up not living with my mom after I turned about 3.5, 4 years old because she had a full on nervous breakdown where she had to be hospitalized. As a little kid, she tried to explain to me, that she was sick. And it's, of course, at the level that I could understand it at that age. And for a short time, because I'm 50 years old, so this was in the early 70s or late 70s, should I say, when this occurred. And so I ended up going to like almost like a transition right before you go into foster care, where they
Mm-hmm.
hold the children overnight or what have you. And my parents were married, but they were actually separated by this time in her life. And so I didn't live in the house with him, but one of my cousins reached out to find him, so that way he could come and get me. So I ended up
Mm-hmm.
moving in with him and his current girlfriend at the time. But long story short, later on, because I didn't see my mom for, I want to say, almost maybe 2 to 3 years after she took sick. That was
Mm.
a different time then. People really didn't speak about mental health and things of that
Yeah.
nature. And my mom had problems with kind of like mania, and so much so that even as an adult, I can tell when someone has some form of mental health issues. I can tell if you haven't been on your medication just from being in that type of environment. Especially if someone is manic, um, I can
Mm.
I can see it a mile away. And the good thing about, there's good and bad. So the good thing about being in an environment like that, it helped me to be very humble. Like I probably am probably one of the most non-judgmental people you're gonna meet,
Mm-hmm.
because I can identify with so many different challenges. But anywho, with that being said, the biggest challenge growing up with my mom, with in struggling with her mental health issues, I ended up moving back with her when I turned 9 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Because of course, as a child, you love your parents, you don't really understand the full capacity of what's going on or what have you.
Right.
And part of her illness, she didn't like women. So at 3 years old, before she got sick, she, loving, kind, doting, so forth and so on. And I know that she loved me, but in the way that she ended up loving me, it was a little different. So as I got older, so my mom, again, you're talking about somebody from a different generation or what have you.
Mhm.
Back in the days, parents would cuss you out, call you out your name, throw stuff, hit you, or whatever. So you top that with someone that struggled with alcoholism, as well as the mental health episodes. So it caused where I had to move around a lot, because when she would get
Mm.
sick, she would be hospitalized, and then somebody in the family would have to take me. A lot of times it would be my older cousin, but that was, it's a strain on people because, you know, a lot of time people barely want to take care of the kids they brought into the world, let alone an extra mouth.
Yeah.
Um, and especially when it's unexpected.
Right.
Um, so that was always hard. And then also the way that she would talk to you, or um or threaten you, you never knew. And so that kind of drove to where I struggle with anxiety. And how that comes into play is because being in a household where whatever you say could cause a trigger for somebody else,
Mhm.
um you have to be mindful of what you say, how you say it, because they might have a reaction, right?
Mhm.
So then it teaches you subconsciously how to, like, it's almost like when you hear people say don't be a people pleaser, you never know what that root is on why that person may be that way. And so in
Yeah.
my case, you're talking about possibly a life or death situation, because my mother used to say things like, if
Mm.
you well, I'll because I'm sick, I can go to jail for 6 months for killing you. So you think about hearing that all the time as a kid.
Oh wow. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And she
Yeah.
might have been saying it out of trying to just scare me,
Mhm.
but it still had a mental traumatic effect on me.
Yeah.
um but it also taught me how to be very independent. So there's always a, opposite to it. So, like, some people do things out of extremes. You have some people that are perfectionists. You have some people that are that just seem to live their life on the edge. I kind of fall somewhere in the middle, where I'm very, very cautious, but at the same time, I enjoy life. But as a kid, I always was like, I'm gonna be anything but like that this individual. Like, I did not want to be
Yeah.
anything like my mom. And then
Mhm.
also growing up in that kind of environment, it gave me an unnatural fear of thinking I was going to be like that, like a like I was going to have a
Mm.
nervous breakdown, or what happens if I get hospitalized. And my mom would share horror stories about being locked up in those facilities, because again, when especially in the Black community, mental
Yeah.
health is looked down upon. So it's always people
Mhm.
dismiss you. Oh, she just crazy. But there were horrible things happening to her in those type of facilities. But because you're
Mm.
mentally ill, no one's believing you, or they're like, oh, they made it
Oh
up, or
wow.
you see them. So
Yeah.
that always made me afraid. And I on my mother's side, I am the oldest, and I have a little brother who is 10 years younger than myself. And because my mom was sick when she was pregnant with him, she had to take pills that they would give her, and it
Mhm.
caused him to have severe birth defects. So when we think about those type of challenges in the mental health um, area, you think about it's not only just someone mentally struggling, but it's also the physical things that can happen to them, and
Yeah.
their children, and then
Mhm.
even the mental issues that it can come with that because of the separation. Because when my mom initially uh, went to the hospital, again, I was really small, and again, she was trying to explain it to me, but
Mhm.
all I if I could close my eyes and just envision it, I still see the facility where we were. I still see them taking her away,
Mm.
and that kind of contributes to where sometimes. I have separation anxiety.
Mhm. Mm.
So I'm very, and I don't like major change. Like
Mhm. Mhm.
I don't like to move. Wherever I am, that's where I want to be.
Yeah.
So because of moving around a lot. But I feel like God don't put more on you than you can bear.
Mhm.
Um and I feel like because of the things that I've endured, it's helped me to be a very compassionate person.
Yeah, for sure. That's a lot, and thank you so much for sharing that and sharing your vulnerability. I mean, I could only imagine what that's like because even when they were taking her away, all you saw was them taking her away and her being gone for so long, and then when she comes back you had to deal with, her the threats and
Right.
the negative behaviors from her because of her um mental illness. So I could only imagine. It's one thing to to grow up. I grew up in that era where your parents would tell you, I brought you in this world and
Yeah, I'll
and I
take you
take
out.
you out. Yeah.
Yes.
It's one
Definitely,
thing to
definitely grew up in that phase. But yeah.
yeah.
And like you said, sometimes they say it and they're saying it because, and also knowing that that's how they
Just
grew up.
to say
Like,
it in yeah.
and then the whooping that they got, or I don't even know if we could classify it as a whooping, how they got disciplined was different than how we were disciplined. So they think that they weren't doing it as aggressively, or I'm not punishing you like how, because
Yeah.
you always say, well, you don't get a whooping nothing like what I got. Well, thank God.
Right.
We don't need a demonstration.
Right.
We're good over here. So yeah, but ironically, well, not ironic, my mother passed away in 2005. So I've been living in Atlanta. I'm from California originally. And my mom passed away shortly after I moved here and just got settled. But after she died, I mean, we our whole relationship wasn't bad, but it was just the things and the challenges of the mental health, and then again coming from different generations, and then I'm raised by different people, so I see the world totally different, so that causes clashes.
Mhm.
But the older I got, and of course after the fact, I understood her better and was able to have a lot more compassion towards her, because you don't think
Mm.
about the illness when you're going through. All you think about is, this is my mom,
Right.
and you know why me, or why this, and this, that, and the
Mhm.
third, and you don't take in consideration that that's still a human being. And
Yeah.
it doesn't excuse a lot of the stuff, but at least you helps you to have a little bit more understanding.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. And I think that growing up, I realized the same thing about my parents. And I mean, you can't help but have that compassion and understanding that it was how they were taught.
Hmm.
And it was how their parents were taught and how their parents been, it
Exactly.
goes back for generations. And we parent, or we tend to parent out of how we were parented to a certain
Absolutely.
extent, or to even become better, not knowing that it really was not. Um, and I because I don't want to construed it, but it was what they knew. Not
Right.
all of the things were the best, but it was what they knew.
Exactly.
Um, so even with that being said, so you're an adult now, you've had children, you now have grandchildren, and you're taking and you're dealing with your own struggles. How has that, or if it has it affected your children?
I would say, um I, I would, if I had to describe my own personal self, I would say I'm a functional person with depression and anxiety. So in other
Mm,
words, there's some people when they get super depressed or whatever, or over anxious, they can't work, or they have a hard time getting out of bed.
yeah.
I'm kind of the opposite. I now don't get me wrong. I'll have, there's times I've had, it depends on what's going on in my environment. Like I've had some really hard times where I couldn't move.
Mhm.
I've had, and I'm a teen mom, so that makes it another layer.
Mhm.
So, with that being said, so I would still function in the world, and sometimes try to make it seem like everything's okay, even if it's not. So
Yeah.
that's not good either. It's okay to not be okay,
Right.
and but that's not how I was raised.
Mm,
It don't matter what happened, you still got to march forward, and that can
yeah.
be a blessing and a curse because then you find yourself burnt out,
Mhm.
or that contributes to the anxiety because you'll over process information, and I'm the queen of over processing. I worry about um people's feelings more than sometimes than I need to, um
Mm.
or um if I get when I get depressed. Now I'm in therapy, so
Mhm.
I'm learning about my triggers, so I'm very good at now identifying my triggers. So I'll give you an example, and it probably will seem minor, but it'll make
Mhm.
sense.
No,
I
it's
used to
it's not minor. Nothing is minor.
I used to love watching ID channel, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And then I couldn't figure out why I'm struggling to go to sleep, or why am I
And
looking at
that's the
people.
channel that has like all the crime shows
Yes,
and stuff,
all the
right? Yeah.
crime, all the killing, and all the
Mhm.
craziness. And I'm like, what is wrong? And I can't sleep. So now I'll fall asleep watching Animal Planet, and my kids are so over me because I'm always watching the veterinarian show. They're like, "You're not a veterinarian.
Yeah.
Will you please
You be on
turn
that
it off?"
you be diagnosing people animals.
What? I know Bumblefeet now because I've watched Dr. Pole and I've watched the Critter Fixer
But you had to do that
for
for
my
your
own
mental
self.
health, right?
Yes, or I'll
Yeah.
watch Dr. Pimple, and even my grandson,
I
he'll come.
love Dr. Pimple Popper.
Yes. And I'm like, you're learning something. They're like, you're gross.
Right. That's what everybody says. But me and my son will sit down and watch it together. That's our show.
That and the foot doctor. I think they were over me when I started watching My Feet Are Killing Me. They're like, this is it. She's losing her mind.
Yeah. Not
But it's
knowing you were really just trying to keep it in hindsight.
yes, yes. It was
Yeah.
just my way of just, decompressing and learning. But
Mhm. Mhm.
the biggest thing is that sometimes just not being as transparent as I could have been about what I was struggling with. Now they're older. My oldest is 33. I have a 31-year-old and I have a 27-year-old. So they
Mhm.
get it now. We have more conversations about it. And I would say what the only thing is the opposite happened. So where I felt like I wasn't protected in certain spaces, I became the overprotector, and you can become codependent. So I'm the worst at letting stuff go when it comes to my kids. Like anybody that knows me knows you can do anything you want, but don't mess with them.
Yeah.
So I'm the helicopter one, and they're not perfect by any means, but I can over like I'm even now I'm trying to do better with mind your business, stay in your lane. They are adults, let them figure it out, because I'm trying to solve everything because I don't want them to um endure anything. And I think
Mhm.
that comes from, that's a natural parent thing, but then you can overdo it and then it
Mhm.
becomes unhealthy. So it's just
Yeah.
kind of finding that line. And then it's different when you have smaller children because you kind of control the environment a little bit better. But when
Right.
they're grown and out in this world, anything can happen. And honestly, all you got is your prayers and your hopes that they're safe. But
Yeah.
that can be a bit much.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. For sure. So even within that regard, because we had this conversation and I mentioned to you that, and that is kind of scary to me that we have people out here who are like that, because I mentioned to you that when I was married a couple of years ago, and had just found out that my ex was cheating on me, and went through this phase where he wouldn't stop and verbatimly told me he was not going to stop. Um, and things like that, that he was 50-50 between me and another woman, I underwent this depression. And I shared with you, I was functionally depressed.
Right.
And that's the thing that's kind of scared me, because it doesn't, people are so used to it looking,
Mm-hmm.
even with suicidal people, they're
Yes.
used to looking like, not, in the bed all day, and not,
Absolutely.
doing well. But these people are still going to work, they're still
Yes.
laughing, they're still
Yes.
smiling. Even your suicidal person, I think when we talked earlier, even that story of the guy, the DJ that was
Yep.
on doing the Ellen
Ellen.
show.
Yes.
I mean, I think that one took everybody
It took everybody by
aback.
surprise because if you looked at the outside, I'll say Twitch, because
Mhm.
he smiled, he entertained, he
All the
the
time.
all the time he brought joy, and you're like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm not understanding. You think about comedians like Robin Williams. I adored
Yeah.
Robin Williams. My whole childhood was Mork and Mindy and all those. Now I'm really showing my age, but but or Mrs. Doubtfire,
Mrs.
things like that.
Doubtfire, yep.
Okay, yeah, I'll bring something that you will be familiar with. I know you're like, what is a Mork and Mindy? Don't worry about it. You got to go on Google or YouTube. But just somebody like that you find joyous or what have you. And so, and I have even when I was pregnant with my first child, um, I did have suicidal thoughts because
Mhm.
um and I don't want to skip past what you said about going through the transition with your ex-husband. The thing is, we all have an idea of how we wanted our lives to be, and when it doesn't
Yeah.
stay on course of what we deem what it should look like, it
Right.
can kick us into depression because it's disappointing, it's hurtful. We go through shame, and what are other people going to think, and
Right.
I mean, and the truth of the matter is, if you do good, somebody going to talk about you. If you do bad, somebody going to talk about you. So
Yeah.
we got to
Right.
get past that because they're going to talk.
Right. Mhm.
And
Regardless.
right. So I mean, we can't control that. But um in as a Christian, I think one of the biggest things we struggle with is like the Bible always tells us that the devil is the author of lies, right? But we buy into the lies, because if somebody says something negative, I'm a dark skinned girl. Things that people said to me in childhood for being dark, it
Mhm.
still it affects my self esteem. So that comes with the depression sometimes. Now
Mm.
I'm a no, thank goodness I'm in the South, but I'm a plus size girl. You know, so
Yeah.
being plus in Georgia is different than being plus in the Bay Area. Just a
Right.
little
Right.
bit. It's different. But, but still, it's just that we all have this idea, if I were this, if I do this, do that, I'm going to feel. That's not how it works. Unfortunately, it just
Mm.
doesn't work. There's not a magic pill. We have to go through the process. We have to go through the healing, and a lot of it is getting to the root and
That's it.
getting get to the root. And I always try to say, um be like, and I shared this with you when we talked, that voice that we hear in our head, oftentimes it's attached to someone in our childhood who we looked up to, who we adored, or what have you, that became our inner voice. For me, my mom, my dad, those are my inner voice. So
Mhm.
I have to fight against that sometimes because although they were my parents, they can be wrong.
Yeah.
And that's just what it is. And I had an old pastor, Pastor Ricky Nutt, from Vallejo, California. He would say, eat the meat and spit out the bones. And that's what I'm trying to exercise in my life now. If you said something negative over me or to me, God, help me to release that. Help me not to
Mhm.
continue to see myself how that person seen me, or how that person might have been casting their own issues on me. Help me to see myself and love myself like you love me, because that's where the struggle is. And the anxiety when I get unsettled, help me to remember in your word, you got me. At the end of the day, you
Mhm.
got me, but I'm
Yeah.
trying to fix it. So that's That's the thing. I'm the fixer, and I want to be in control. And that's probably the biggest thing. We want to control everything, and when we lose control, it
Yeah.
it goes downhill.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. Absolutely, because I used to have a big problem, and I'm growing in that area, but I had to, and what you said was take it to the root. I had
Yes,
to find out through therapy. I didn't find out, on my own, but through prayer and through therapy, I found out that a lot of things that I deal with as an adult were unfortunately rooted from childhood. I mean,
absolutely.
taking it all the way back. And so kudos to you for um, being in therapy, because then you have those other people who are feeling like something is wrong,
Hmm.
but refusing to go to therapy, refusing.
Yes.
They see that they're doing certain things. They see their habits and that their ways are negative and not only affecting them, but it's affecting their children, their
Yep.
family, their friends, um, and things like that. And they don't do anything. Will just be as prideful as all get
Yep.
out.
Yep.
Now that's a whole nother different conversation, because that is just at that point it is a spirit. It is a Leviathan spirit, because they're so full of pride. You don't think nothing is wrong with you, and yet you're killing, not literally, but killing everything around you, friendships,
Yes.
family, kids. Your
Yes.
people are suffering around you, and yet you still don't want to get
Acknowledge it.
help. Right. And so
Hmm.
kudos to you for being able to acknowledge that, and being in therapy and acknowledge and being aware of your triggers. So how are you managing and maintaining now? Not that, outside of therapy and things of that, if anything else.
So for me, I do. I'm before I used to struggle with wanting to try to take medication, right?
Hmm.
Because medicine, again, all the taboos in our culture. So for
Yeah.
me, and then especially seeing the medications my mother had to take and things like that, you know, um, I don't
Yeah.
know about that, but
Right.
I was like, you know what? I'm getting to the point where I'm getting literally probably, if at best, 3 hours of sleep at night. I'm tossing and I'm turning. And or I'm worried about work because I'm the if my name is attached to it, I want it to be right. So I
Hmm.
if I'm worried about something going to be wrong, so I will worry myself overtime. So I say, you know what, this is not normal. This
Yeah.
can't be normal. I
Yeah.
know people. Well, some people. I'm going to be mindful of what I say. They don't have a strong work ethic. That's the politically correct way of saying you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
so clearly they don't have a problem with it. I need a little bit of what they have, and they need a little bit of what I got, so we can all be even. But I take Lexapro, generic kind, and it's
Hmm.
for anxiety and depression. At first, I was
Anxiety.
like, "This medicine's not working." I didn't think it was until I think maybe 3 weeks ago. I realized I said, "Oh, it is working," because this situation that I'm dealing with would have normally had me so anxious and so upset or so jittery.
Hmm.
I felt none of that. I was just like, all right, well, it's not that I don't care, but it's kind of
Yeah.
turned down the care factor in my mind. Like, okay, I can
Mm.
only do what I can do. I can only control what I can control. I'm
Yeah.
not going to obsess over this thing and cause myself to be out of sorts because you don't get to enjoy life like that.
Yeah, that part. Yeah. No, for sure, for sure. And I think my laptop it died on me, but I
Uh
had some
oh.
statistics pulled up, because in actuality it's more prevalent
Hmm.
than what people think. Um, it is, especially within the Black community. I mean, I sit back and I think about, if you think about from a generation who came from slaves,
Hmm.
from slavery all the way up to now, to still dealing with police brutality,
Yes.
and even Black women within the healthcare field.
Yes.
I mean, we have a history of anxiety issues.
Yes.
We have a lot to be concerned about as Black
Absolutely.
men and women. And so
Mm-hmm.
It's more prevalent than what people think or want to perceive.
Yes,
Um,
I
for
would
it to
agree.
be, yeah. And so let me make this disclaimer for anyone that's listening. This is not um counseling. This is not clinical advice. We're just sharing, and Janelle is sharing her experiences. But if you are experiencing any symptoms of anxiety, of depression, or any form of mental illness, even if it runs in your family,
Yeah,
you have to be aware and conscious of that, not in a fearful manner, but be conscious of it. Please seek out a therapist, talk with your
yeah.
physician, your primary care doctor. This is in no shape, form, or fashion any type of clinical advice. We are not telling you what to do. Don't go to your doctor and tell them that you need
Please
Lexapro.
don't.
Like, don't do that. Like,
No.
seek out God. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that's important. But
Yes.
seek out your physician, seek out your therapist or psychiatrist. Please do those things. Okay, let me just, I
Yes.
forgot
Let's
to make
please
that in the
clarify. Yes.
beginning.
And,
Yeah, people,
and everything
well,
don't
Dear
work for
Memo, did the lady
everybody.
on Dear Mingle? Yeah, it
No,
does
no, no,
not.
no. Because everything don't work for everybody, and we're all
Yeah,
different. So please don't do that. Um,
yes,
and then
yes,
also one thing that you mentioned about the different things, we're taught, especially I would say specifically for minority women, and we're always and men too. But since I'm a woman, I'm only gonna speak to that part of it.
yeah.
We're taught to keep it moving no matter what. So I think of
Mhm,
microaggressions that some of us experience at work. I think
mhm,
about I'm a survivor of rape. Um
mhm.
I'm a survivor of domestic violence. Um um I'm not allowed the luxury of taking a time out and lick my
Yeah,
wounds and heal.
yeah, yeah.
I have to keep it moving because
Mhm,
the world that we live in, no matter how much we want to believe, if you live in La La Land, then yes, I have that same luxury. But the reality it is, I don't.
mhm.
You know, so
Yeah.
I have less time, and I don't even have the bandwidth to deal with certain things. Like
Mhm, mhm.
I was talking to someone about or actually, well, I know who I was talking to, but we were talking about death. We all deal with death differently, right?
Yeah.
For me,
Uh-huh.
I compart I kind of put it in buckets.
Mhm.
I have some friends, they have to go to the cemetery. I have some friends that they have to feel like they're having a conversation. For me,
Yeah.
once I go to the funeral, I never go back.
Mhm,
And the
mhm.
reason being because if I go back, it's going to take me back to that same
Mhm.
day of the funeral. I don't want to feel
Yeah.
that because if I
Yeah.
feel that, I can't continue to function. It's probably not
Mhm.
healthy, but that's how I continue to move
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah.
And we all do different things, and and
Mhm.
for your listeners, it's very critical to find what works for you.
For
But you
you.
do need to
Mhm.
identify your triggers, and you have to be honest with yourself because no one can
Yeah.
help you like you can help you because no one knows you
Mhm.
like you know you.
For sure. That's really good. That's really good because it's this, and even when dealing with grief, it's this notion of that you're just supposed to just fall out and be balled out and things like that. And for me personally, I'm kind of the same way. Once I go to the funeral, if I even go to the grave site, I don't go back. I just don't. I mean, and that plus for me, I'm just not a person who does that. I grieve differently.
Yeah.
Um and it's not that I suppress it, I just do it differently. And I
Yes.
think a part of it for me is that even, and not saying that nobody else does, but and this is even a conversation that I took to my therapist. She was like, there's nothing wrong with you, you just grieve differently. I mean, I'm not, and I have never, and maybe it's because, and I've lost people that were close to me, but I've
Mhm.
never been that person to drown it out or draw it out for weeks or long, long periods of time. I think about that person or those people from time to time, and I'd be like, gosh,
Mhm.
I miss that person, but I'm not like, in the bathroom bawling, crying. And this is not saying that there's anything wrong with that. There's
No,
nothing wrong
no,
with
no,
that. If that's what you do, there's nothing wrong with that. But
no.
that's for me personally. So, with all of that being said, we're gonna wrap it up. I'm here. First of all, again, thank you so much for
You're
sharing your
welcome.
story and for sharing your vulnerability. The last question that I did want to ask, because I'm feeling prompted to ask. So,
Mhm.
with dealing with all of that, with the anxiety and the depression of being on medication, just kind of walk us through how did that even affect your relationships, or even friendships, and or both?
Well, I think so. My kids always tease, God forbid if I died today or tomorrow, they're gonna have to put it on a live stream because they swear I'm gonna
Oh.
fill up the Georgia. I mean the stadium because I am the friend that's gonna show up for you. If I'm in a position that I can, I'm gonna support you in whatever your endeavors
Mhm.
are. So
Mhm.
I'm that person, or um I'm the friend that's gonna get the late night call where someone may ask me for advice, or I might get the text or whatever, and that I'm that family member. Like I guess the unifier. That's the best way I can explain it. I'm the unifier because I'll have people in my family, they may not get along, but both of them
Yeah.
get along with me. So I'm gonna figure out a way to get us to be okay with each other to get through this moment. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Mhm.
So for my friends, I think that they do see that I am really working on me and they're proud of me for that.
Mhm.
Um, my father has dementia, early stage dementia. So when he's clicked in, I call it clicked in when he's with us,
Yeah.
100%. He always tells me he loves me and he's proud of me. So I know he gets it. Like I said, my mom's been gone, but her sister always tells me how proud she is and things like that. So I don't think I have any struggles there because I have always showed up. I think where the
Mhm.
transition will come is when I'm not able to show up as often because I'll have to start saying no as I continue
Mhm.
on my healing journey.
Right, right. Yeah, absolutely. And saying no, I love this when I saw this. No is a complete sentence.
It is, but it's the hardest sentence to say.
It is, especially if you're a giver and you're always that person. And even
Hmm.
over the years I've had to kind of recognize that, and I've, had to tell people, like, you know what, right now I just don't, I'm gonna pray for you, but right now I just don't have the capacity to take on what you're trying to speak with me about right now. And it's not that I don't
Right.
love you or care, I just don't have the bandwidth right now.
And also being
Amen.
mindful to make sure that your intentions are pure when we're doing it. That's one of the things we have to pray
Yeah.
about because sometimes you have to ask yourself, am I showing up for the individual because of something that's in me that's empty, or am I showing up because I'm
Mm,
showing up, if that makes sense? I'm
that's
not trying to feel
good.
something going on inside of myself, but I'm trying to show up for that individual with nothing attached.
That's good. That's really good because we can definitely have a impure motive
Right. And you don't
behind
realize
showing up
it.
for people. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not
Mhm.
that you're trying to be negative or nasty or anything like that, but sometimes you have to ask yourself, like, why am I saying the yes? And then, or don't be
Mm.
so quick to respond. Like if someone asks you, don't feel like I got to do it right now. Let me pause. And that is a struggle for me because I
Mhm.
want to say yes so bad. And sometimes I'll say no and I'll feel bad about it. And I have an older child. I'm the fuzzy one. My kids are so not. So my son be like, I don't know what you're tripping for. It's no. Like, dang, Yasmin. Like, no, it's no. You don't have time for that. Like, okay.
Yeah. I'm the same way with my mother. I have to tell her no. Like, no, you're not about to do it right now. No, you're not gonna do that right now. Like, no. Like, and it's okay. No.
It's
It's
hard for
okay.
me and her. It's our
Yeah.
generation.
Yes, it definitely is. It definitely is. But it definitely is. But just the last few words, so if you can say anything or encourage, well, let me say this, that off of what she said, I want to add to that, that there have to be boundaries in place as well. Um you have to set boundaries with people that are in your life, whether it's romantic, whether it's a friendship, whatever, even with coworkers, there have to be boundaries set in place. So I kind of want to add to that. But Chanel, if you just wanted to or leave the listeners with anything, what would you say to the listeners as we wrap up and close?
That your mental health is just as important as your physical health. Um,
Mm,
and we live in a time now that life is hard and it's coming at everyone in every direction. It is
yeah.
so important to take care of that first. Whether it's you just simply turning off everything, the phone, the TV. If you
Mm-hmm.
find you feel a certain way in the pit of your stomach every time you're around somebody or you watch something, ask yourself, is it worth it? Because you should always come away feeling better. And if that's not how you're feeling, there is a problem, and you are the only person that can control that.
That's so good. That is so good, especially when you said that your mental health is just as important as the physical. Yeah,
If
that's so
not
good.
more, because it's all connected, to be honest.
Yes, it really, really is. And I tell people this all the time from even from working in the medical field. I've seen people come in and be just stressed. There's
Hmm.
absolutely nothing wrong with them. They're stressed. All of the blood work is fine, x-rays fine, everything is literally fine. And then when you start talking with these people, they're just stressed.
Hmm.
They're stressed. They need a vacation. They need a break. They need a break. They're stressed, and
Yes.
it's like, yeah, there's nothing wrong with you, but even that can affect the physical health, even as something as small as even unforgiveness. And I'm not gonna
Oh.
go down that rabbit hole, but
Ooh.
even when I researched the effects of unforgiveness, high blood pressure, high cholesterol,
Hmm.
it affects so much pains, aches, joints. It affects
Yes.
literally the body
Yes.
all with the mind. So it's very, very key. And so thank you again so
You're
much for just
welcome.
sharing your story and being vulnerable with us. I'm sure, and I really, really pray that it really just blesses someone, even someone who is not fully aware. And I really pray that this, you know, um, what's the word I'm looking for? Not push. I don't want to
Ah,
say push, but it makes them aware
yeah.
to
Take
seek
action.
within.
Hmm.
Yes, 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 to
Hmm.
take action. And so you guys, again, if you are not follow me on Instagram, you can do so at Dear Single Mama Podcast. Also on Facebook at Dear Single Mama Podcast. Again, share this episode with someone. Listen, this is Mental Health Awareness Month. Please share this with someone, even if you don't feel that it's for you and you are self aware of what you have going on, you are already in therapy. Please share this episode with someone. Do your due diligence. Don't just, we're called to do that. We're called to disciple. We're called to share with others what is beneficial for them. So even if you don't think that they will be receptive of it, share it anyway. You never know that there may be a time that they'll go back and search for or ask you about it. You just sow the seed and you never know, and just allow God to do what he does best, and water it, and you just sow the seed. So thank you again so much,
You're welcome.
Chanel, for coming on. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you for having me, and I join you in that agreement that this will bless somebody.
Yes, in Jesus' name. All right, guys. Until next time, this has been another episode of Dear Single Mama Podcast. Peace.